You see my Gila monster in the background.
I
Yay.
do. I do get to see your lovely Gila monster that you made.
Yeah. Oh, and here's the kitty. Can you see the kitty?
Hello,
See the kitty?
kitty.
Like around. There you go. There you go. Oh, the kitty apparently thinks we should be out in the garden. He's being really cute.
The one time when a cat gets to be cute,
Yeah.
decides to be cute. All right, so you have done a bit of a big change in things.
Yes.
You are now
Yes. Look
doing
at look at me. Look at my face. If you lose enough weight, all you have to show is your face.
you've lost a
Yeah,
lot of
here
weight,
I am.
but you've also gone into perfume. You've
Yes,
shifted
and
right
these
into
are
perfume.
related. These are related ideas. And so the first set that I made, can you see that?
Yes.
Um, it's hard to tell what I've got in the picture or not because the in this app the photo thing keeps going at a weird angle. I don't know why it's doing that instead of going straight on.
Okay. But we are able
Um,
to see it fully, so
yeah. So let me see if I can get that a little closer. Can you see it? Okay. So the first set of fragrances I made are these ones, and they're called the Erin's Garden Collection, and they're um, dedicated to the times of day that you might find something in the garden. Oh, so as you know, I've lived in this house for about 25 years, and I have been planting things and growing things and eating things and doing a lot of plant related things here over the years and um, had a couple of hobbies related to the garden, one making whiskey and the other making soap. Well, um, when I started my perfumery journey in the fall of last year, so in the fall of last year, I received the blessing of the Gila monster. Uh, the blessing of the Gila monster is the medicine that was developed um, by scientists who studied the Gila monster. Now, the power of the Gila monster is to feel full. Gila monster only eats once a year in the spring, and the rest of the year it just isn't hungry. So the scientists wanted to know why that is, and if they could replicate that in something that they could give to humans, and they did it. They studied the Gila monsters in the lab. Now, I don't think they actually have Gila monsters in the factory, but they did study them in the lab to develop those. So I received the blessing of the Gila monster, and when I told people that, everyone thought I meant that I actually got an actual Gila monster to bite me as a transformation ritual because that's just me. My brother sent me an article saying that many people who, especially women who um, go on the GLP medicine, um, get really into perfume, and and of course, then he had to helpfully send me his Fragrantica profile so that I could look at his perfumery page and join the site, which I did. And okay, here I am back, kitty. Thank you. That's my good kitty. That's my good kitty. So, and I that's how I got into the perfumes. And I joined on the 1st of October last year, and within 3 weeks, I was making my own perfumes, which anyone who knows me knows that's just me all over. That's anything I get super enthused about. I want to fully participate in. I don't want to watch sports. I want to play the sports. You know, I enjoy looking at art in a museum, but I also want to make art, and I enjoy uh, when I got into making quilts because my friend Ingrid was into it. Um, I decided that I really liked hand dyed fabrics, so I learned how to make hand dyed fabrics and started a business doing hand dyed fabrics. That's who I have always been. So when I got super obsessed with perfumes, of course I wanted to make them because that's me. So I started with this, the stuff in my garden, and I used the same equipment and know-how that I used in my hobbies of making whiskey and soap, and started making my own fragrances. And um, I actually started by making soaps. I've made lots and lots of different perfumery products, including actual perfumes, but also soaps, lotions, all kinds of things like that. And I I start with something from my garden, like this. Some lavender I picked in my garden a couple days ago. And I start with this, and I make extracts the exact same way I would if I was going to make food with it. And this was one of the ingredients in my Northern Lights Goddesses Brew, which was a flavored whiskey. So this was one of the ingredients I put in that, and I make the extracts for my perfumes the exact same way I would make them if I was making them for whiskey, with the same equipment and everything. So I got really into that, and I added um, perfume, fragrance, and flavor products to my Magical Realist Artist um, Sunprint and hand dyed fabric brand. Now I haven't actually made hand dyed fabrics in a long time because with my arthritis, I got to the point where I couldn't physically do that work anymore. Um, but um, I still have a bunch of other fiber arts that I make. As you know, I showed you that weaving right at the beginning of our little episode here. That's a weaving of the Gila monster, and I started that almost as soon as I started my weight loss, health, and perfumery journey to honor the Gila monster, and then eventually I made a Gila monster fragrance. And can you see the little tables here? All right, and these are some various fragrances. Um, everybody, so yeah, this is like every and you'll hear a lot of people saying that perfumes need to like settle and stuff. They don't need to settle. I actually shake them up because there's no stabilizers in here. This is just fragrance and perfumer, and this is just fragrance and alcohol in there. There's no stabilizers or any preservatives or any of the things that are in commercial perfumes. So I actually shake them like that. So anyway, that's just an aside because I just habitually start shaking them as soon as I pick them up because I wanted to explain why I was doing that. So this is the fragrance that I have made for the Gila Monster, and it contains things from the Gila Monster's range, including big sagebrush, creosote bush, queen of the night cactus flower, and monsoon rain. Actual monsoon rain that I collected out in the garden while it was raining. I call this fragrance the Gila Monster Powers fragrance. So that's the story behind that. And I was actually not prescribed these medicines for weight loss. I was prescribed them for diabetes, and they work. Knock on wood.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So normally when we have you on, when I have you on, we're gonna talk. We quite often talk about Norse history, and funny enough, we were talking earlier, and you said,
Yes,
although you've done a couple of Norse themed uh, perfumes, you have done. Uh, it turns out that the Norse weren't exactly all big on perfume.
they really weren't. They really weren't that big on perfume. Actually, um, they were severe minimalists about their bathing practices. They would seek out natural hot springs, and if they didn't have a natural hot springs, they would just heat up a hot bath. But they didn't use a lot of things. They used like tools like combs, and they had like extensive um uh like grooming for like getting the beard trimmed exactly right, and they'd like braid it and put beads in it, and they had like fancy carved combs, but they didn't really use a lot of bathing products like we do today. um they considered bathing to be a ritual purification act. There was um one day out of the week, Saturday, was dedicated to bathing and washing. Is the old name for Saturday was Laugerdager, which means bath day, and they would just get in the natural hot springs with nothing else, just water, just the hot spring water, and the goal was to be purified. So they didn't put anything in with it.
Yeah. Okay. And I find,
Um,
yeah, and this is interesting because I'd imagine because it's best described that their living conditions were very smelly. And I'd think that somebody would love to just bring a little perfume in to freshen up the home.
well, they did have things like they would be drying herbs in the house, um, that they would use for like um, food and drink and healing and such like that. But um, there's there's no evidence they actually had a formal perfumery practice where they would have containers of things. If there was a container for it, it would show up in grave goods, if nowhere else. Um, and there are no such containers that have been found. So there's no evidence they used any. Although um, they did use a lot of other things that were trade goods that originated from elsewhere. Um, long before the Viking Age, um, the the ancestors of the Vikings, the Germanic tribes, um, were already traveling all over the world, and there was a set of uh, Germanic warriors called the Varangian Guard that were the personal bodyguard of the Emperor of Byzantium. The Varangian Guard um, were they were not out in the field. They lived in the palace, and they would have had access to everything that the rest of the courtiers of the Emperor of Byzantium had. Um, they came back home with silks and rings from. They came back with silk from China and rings from Arabia, and just everything that the Byzantine Empire had, and they would have had access to any perfumes that the Byzantine Empire had too. Um, but we have not found any such containers that they brought back with them. Now it's possible they might have only they may have only used them there and not brought them back. but um, they've, maybe they used a lot of fragrances and foods and drinks and so forth when they lived there that they didn't bring back. That's possible, but we don't know. Maybe,
Yeah, that could
but
be.
you know
I
what?
find
That's
that
okay. You know
interesting
what? Yeah,
because, at the same
yeah,
time, all around the world, there's other cultures using
yeah,
perfumes, reading it too, and things that smell
yeah,
nice.
yeah. Um, but just because they didn't use it doesn't mean we can't use it. We're I mean, we're on a Zoom call. It's not like we're trying to live a reenactor lifestyle here. Um,
It's like when I talked with Herstwick in October.
yeah,
They're talking about the pitfalls of historical accuracy, and yet on their
yeah,
website, they're just for that essay, for that argument, they show a picture
yeah.
of someone in a costume using a snowblower.
Yes, that's right. And the people I know who are into historical reenactment are not doing that 24/7 anyway. Some of the same people who are in the uh, heathen era reenactor guild that goes to the Ren Fair are also in a motorcycle club. So it's it's not like we're the Amish that we're just like not going to participate in the 21st century. And you know what? They're not participating in the 21st century either. Some of my publishing colleagues in the heathen world are fancy Dutch, and they've been translating their works and publishing them. I published one of those in No Horns on These Helmets. I published the traditional short story Delbel the Butzaman, and a Butzaman is a magical scarecrow, and that's something from Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and they're on the internet. They're on the internet publishing because not all of the Pennsylvania Dutch are plain. Some of them are fancy, and the heathens are generally fancy. That's what they call it. That's
True.
what no, that's what they actually call it. They call it plain or fancy. You can tell which one is fancy because they have a feather in their hat. I'm not kidding. They do.
No, I take your word for it. I will note it down. The Norse didn't, but did the Germanic tribes or the Germanic people use perfumes at all?
Not that we know of, um, but that doesn't mean we can't.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, I drive a car, so just because they didn't do it doesn't mean I can't do it. And everything I do as a heathen. It doesn't even driving the car. I
Yeah.
have I have I have on occasion um, prayed for good traffic and parking, and so uh,
I think anyone of any religious background or spiritual beliefs probably does the same thing whenever they get into a car.
yeah, yeah. And oh, if anyone is wondering, the god of travel is Odin. So if you if you want to do the same thing, that's that's who I contact for good travel conditions.
Okay. Now, so the gods and the peoples that you mention, kind of as an overall in terms of their history,
Mhm.
um, perfume and nice smelling things were not necessarily in their repertoire.
Not necessarily, but just because they didn't make perfume of it didn't mean they didn't like nice smells. In fact, what have I got right here? I think I think it's a rose. Hail Freya. It's a pink rose. In fact, that's an old pink rose. So this the the rose is the sacred plant of the goddess Freya, and uh, the especially the pink rose or wild rose, but any rose, unless a specific rose bush is dedicated to someone else, of course. So they did acknowledge nice fragrances. They just didn't make perfumes out of them, as far as we know. Maybe they did, and we just don't know. If they had bathing products that they made on the spot and completely used up and didn't ever put in a container, it wouldn't leave any evidence. So it's still possible, even though we haven't seen any evidence of it.
Okay. All right. Well, nonetheless, it is interesting though to learn about that.
Yeah.
And
So anyway, I do have a website, the Magical Realist Artist website on WordPress, and I can send you a link to that. And I didn't really get into this part, but um, when when I got into perfumes, happened to be also the um, the time period when I was uh, looking for a new home business because as you know, I've been writing and editing for 30 years, and I should I should be at this point at the top of my earning potential. And my industry got completely wrecked by Gen AI. My editing clients got out of the business because stopped they stopped publishing, and they're not buying editing services if they're not going to publish. So uh, when and when I looked for new editing clients, I discovered everyone was in a race to the bottom of of pay, and everyone was starting to expect free samples of everything, um, and I realized that I needed to get out of the business too. I'll still do editing work if anyone is interested in it. I have done a little more editing work in the past year, but not the amount that I was getting before the age of Gen AI wrecked authors' incomes. Authors, artists, voice actors, everyone whose product streams over the internet is having all of their work stolen by corporations and repackaged as AI products. Uh, and I decided that um, I needed to get into a business that cannot be reduced to ones and zeros, because everything that can be reduced to ones and zeros is being stolen. All of our work is being stolen, and there's and we're all not making the money that we used to. So all of us are stopping. We're all getting out of the business and doing something else because we have to. We're not hobbyists. It's our job. If people stop paying, we have to do something else. So I decided to turn my soap making hobby and my whiskey and cookery hobbies into uh, the basis of my new fragrance and flavor products business. And I added that to my magical realist artist brand because I already had an established eBay presence and other related business presences. Um, so that's why I went ahead and went with the magical realist artist name again, even though that actually was originally referring to fabric dyeing. But I think it works for this too. I decided to try to turn this into a home business. Well, the other reason being I have to have a home business because I'm not physically capable of doing a regular job. It's it's not practical or reasonable to expect to do that. Um, I I can't even actually do retail sales of my own stuff. I did it for Pagan Pride Day because that was a charity event, um, but I had someone helping me because someone went in on me. So someone went in with me on the booth, and it still knocked me flat for a week. Oh, I thinking of fragrances and the Norse and so forth. I don't have a whole lot of things that are specific to Asatru because um, uh, I was exploring, the Gila monster and garden and that. Um, and also, I already have a friend that has made Asatru related um, fragrances. The perfumer at Cherry Cause Trunk has an entire line of them, and I actually helped design a couple of them before I even got super into perfumes. So I was already enough into perfumes to do that before I even started this. The Odin one and the Heimdall one, I helped design on Cherry Cause Trunk. That's an Etsy store. Um, so I didn't want to compete with those. So I didn't want things specifically um, that would compete head to head with that. Um, but I couldn't help myself in designing a Loki related fragrance, even though he already has a Loki related fragrance, but they're completely different. His Loki fragrance is called Wordsmith, Silver Wordsmith, and um, it references the cleverness of wordplay and so forth, and how close a brother Loki is to Odin, the god of poetry, and because they borrow each other's powers all the time. But mine is dedicated to the shape shifting aspect, and it's called Foxy. And now most people think Foxy is just a pretty lady's fragrance because it's mostly jasmine and fresh air. Um, which is true. It is a pretty lady's fragrance, but it's also for Loki because the fox is one of his forms, and and he also has female forms, just like Odin does. Um, so that works, and I'm currently working on a flanker for Foxy called Foxy Winter that one of the um, people on the perfume website suggested that I should make. Um, so so I actually do have one heathen related fragrance, and that's the one.
Okay. Well, I'll be excited to check these things out, and people can always look at the link. And Erin, thank you again for coming on and talking about perfume and smelly things that, funny enough, it seems like the Vikings didn't really like all too much. But today we can enjoy.
That's right. We can enjoy lots of things they didn't have.
All right. Thank you again, Erin.
Thank you. It was great to be on. See you next time.